Hello friends, so we will continue with the Java. So little bit about history. So Java basically was introduced in 1990 and it was started as part of a project Green, and obviously it was not intended for internet. So it was basically meant for doing consumer electronics activities. That means they wanted to make consumer electronics devices smarter. So they were trying to embed programs that will make consumer electronics devices like toasters, washing machine, VCRs to be more intelligent. And that's where the James Gosling, the great personality, was given the responsibility. And we can see the book also from the same person, James Gosling. So when this particular thing was carried out by James Gosling, then essentially they tried to work on the issues that were there as part of C++. C++ and C overall were very powerful, but it was also dangerous. And the dangerous thing basically came from the extensive use of pointers, because a lot of people who came from C and C++ background, they were good at pointers, but many were not when they were joining it newly. So it introduced the issues like memory leaks, and it basically lead to program crashing. So the basic thing that was required as part of making the devices smarter was to make the devices robust. That means we would like to have a washing machine, we would like to have a VCR and things like that to be robust. It cannot be like you always restart Windows and then the things work the way in which it happens in Windows world. That cannot be the case when it comes to washing machine, toaster and things like that. So you don't expect a washing machine to crash. So basically, they made arrangements to ensure that the people who come from C and C++ background, they don't basically use the pointers and they replaced it with something which is references. And then they also basically came up with a solution where they can have a memory management done in an automated fashion. So essentially they came up with a programming language, and that programming language was definitely not called as a Java. It was something called as Oak. Now here they basically wanted to have a programming language which should be architecturally neutral. So architectural neutrality was one of the important aspects. That means they wanted to have a language which will run on any CPUs, any controllers and things like that. That means it should run on say i3, i5 or even the other processors of say ARM and all that. So it should work independent of a processor. That means they basically wanted a programming language which should be architecturally neutral, and that particular thing is called as platform independence. So then basically they realized that whatever the goals they are trying to achieve for consumer electronics basically are suited even for internet programming. Had it been not the case that internet had come that time, by the time that particular situation say around 1993, 92 like that, then it would have been like a disaster for Java. Probably Java would have been killed by the time in 1995 types, around 92, 93 types. So things were like they basically started doing something for consumer electronics. However, they wanted a language which will be suited for internet and worldwide web programming, and that's where the object oriented features were required, and essentially those features were required even to support very good user interface. That means a good graphical user interface was required. Then needless to mention, it should be robust and it should be architecturally neutral. So what did they do? Essentially this team they basically expanded the team and they retargeted overall approach for of Java, which was that time called as Oak, for the internet programming. And the first browser I will say that came was called as WebRunner, and that was written basically in Oak, and then it was later renamed as Hot Java. So in 1995, basically the invention or the birth of Java actually has happened, and Oak was renamed to Java. And why it was named Java? The reason was basically the place from where this team used to take coffee basically was called as Oak, or rather it was called as Java, and that's where they basically named it to Java. So that's where you see the Java with always the vapors, and basically it's a cup of coffee or a coffee mug essentially. So was Java basically a internet version of C++? It was not. The reason was because it was not intended to replace C++, but it was intended to solve different set of problems. So what are those different set of problems that we will understand, or we will learn, or rather it will come as part of our further learning itself. So some of the important buzzwords that typically Java has, or which are very popular, is like it should be simple, or the language should be simple, and it should be secure. Now that is a very important aspect when it comes to internet programming. And it should be portable. That means it should, the game that is developed on one particular mobile or say on laptop should work on a mobile and vice versa. Then it should support object oriented features. Needless to mention, it should be robust. Then it should support multi-threading. Now multi-threading is a different aspect we will learn as we proceed forward. Then as mentioned, it should be architecturally neutral. Then it should give a good performance. Then it should be distributed, and then it should have dynamic support or dynamic features which are basically supported. So all these are some of the buzzwords that are part of Java. So now in the next video, what we will do is, or in the next class or a session, we will study these buzzwords little more in detail, and then we will basically go through a program which helps us to understand how do we go about writing Java program. And needless to mention, we will touch base on these aspects like why is it secure, why is it object oriented, and things like that. Obviously those aspects has to be dealt before we write a simple program also. Thank you.